everybody, how you doing? Welcome back to another Thursday night live show. And we are at, sorry, let me start all over. I'm going to continue to screw this whole intro thing up. I don't know why my brain just mentally just can't grasp it. Thank you all for joining into another Thursday night episode coming at you from the Smokin' Studios at the Rocky Mountain Cigar Show. Our guest is having a little bit of internet connectivity, so we're going to let him come back on. Travis should be on here shortly. However, to kick the show off like normal, we've always got to say thank you very much to all the sponsors that remotely make this show humanly possible. BAMF Cigars, big shout out to Ish and crew over at BAMF and ROCF Cigars. Jared Trudeau and Glenn Case of Kristoff Cigars, thank you so much. Karen Berger over at Karen Berger Cigars, thank you very much. Sagrado Cigars, John Stewart. We've got New Air Humidors, thank you very much. Micallef Cigars, Big Sky Cigars, Cornell and Diehl Pipe Tobacco, La Aurora Cigars, and last but certainly not, well, not last, but certainly not least, we've got the big guy, Abe DeBabda, to thank for a big help on the show as well over at smokin.com or Smokin' Cigars. If you're in the Boynton Beach or West Palm area, stop in, let them know that you watch the show, or jump onto smokin.com and sign up for their Smokin' Cigar of the Month Club, as well as you'll find every single brand pretty much that's worth having at Smokin' Cigars as well, including all the line of the Altadis brand. And tonight we are drinking the Axe in the Oak bourbon, and we're gonna go ahead and bring in our guest Travis here.
Hello.
And before we get really kicked off, Travis, go ahead and just for those that do not know who you are, anybody watching the show most likely does. Give a quick little rundown of who you are and what you do for Altadis.
Well, I mean, the title, I'll read you what's on my business card. Is National Education Manager. Now, I've asked 1,000 people and only a handful could really explain what that is. And the best way to describe it is I'm just a big cigar nerd who gets to run around the country, teach retail staff, teach consumers to bring them up to the next level of what cigars are and how they're built and kind of fill in the gaps on this luxury thing we call cigars. Nice little hobby.
Well, absolutely. Well, let's kick off the show here with this first segment sponsored by Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust, and it is What Are You Smoking Tonight? Travis, I'll let you go first, and then I'll let you explain what I'm smoking. Well,
you can't tell what I'm smoking? It's a cigar. What are you smoking? I mean, you are in Colorado, so I got a question. But I'm actually smoking, and I mean, one of the biggest things that I do, and people get on me about this, I pop bands off. But there again, I could be smoking anybody's stuff from Dunbarton's to Micallef to, I mean, I enjoy cigars. So I could be smoking a competitor, but I like to smoke our product. But tonight I'm smoking the H. Upman Heritage in a Corona size.
Nice. And I will show everybody what I'm smoking, but as this is the first time I've ever even had it, and it was a gift from Travis over a year ago, just found this in the humidor tonight, I will let Travis explain what I am smoking.
It is the Monte Cristo 50th anniversary. Now, this is a special selection of the 50th anniversary in a bellicoso or a torpedo size, and it was a limited production run, and it was one lady who's worked for our company in the factory, our Dominican factory, for over 50 years. Now, this is a 50th anniversary cigar for the Tabacalera de Garcia factory down in the Dominican. So to have somebody that was really, the company was only 2 years old at that point, started working for the company, and then she runs our specialty rolling department, and she's on our Grupo de Maestro team members, our master blending team. And she was the only one that bunched and rolled every single one of the cigars that are in the bellicoso shape. So you're getting a cigar that's hand done by a lovely woman and she was the only one who had her hands on to make this great cigar.
Wow. And why is that? Why should anybody be excited about something like a story like that behind the cigar? Because that's impressive, right? So why should that curl any cigar nuts toes?
Well, in our factory down in the Dominican, you get well over 3,000 employees in that factory. And to have one lady who's been there as long as someone has, I mean, think of anybody today who can say, hey, I've been at the same job for 25, 30, 35 years. That's impressive. But for 48 years, playing in tobacco, playing in the world of tobacco, being a female as a master blender or part of the master blending taste panel team, it says a lot about who she is and her character. So it says a lot about her. But then to have, there again, 48 years in one business, and to have her take the time to roll the cigars that mean a lot to them as a Dominican culture, and having that factory being so much of her life that she spent the time and put those together. So she was very honored to do that, and we were honored to have her do that.
Well, it's impressive. It's a very smooth cigar right from the beginning, like you said. It's very well balanced. So looking very forward to having this. Like I said, completely forgot that it was even in my humidor. It's kind of the nice thing of having a bigger humidor is you just forget about stuff, which is always kind of nice. But anyways, thank you so much. And this has been the What Are You Smoking Tonight segment, brought to you by Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust. Thank you very much.
Almost think it's like that Easter egg hunt, and you find it. It's like, oh God, there it is.
Mm-hmm.
You found it, yes.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. So let's go ahead and kick off the show here with some Altadis questions here. So let's see. Altadis obviously has a very rich history and legacy in the cigar world. How do you see that heritage influencing not only just the company's present, but in the future going forward? So let me kind of shape it a different way. Some people would say that Altadis is definitely, well, not some people, everybody would say Altadis is an older company by every standard in the cigar world. How does an older company like that set the stage to be present in the future with the updating technology, the updating in the marketing world, and just staying in touch with their clientele?
Well, the marketing, and they didn't have marketing back, in 1803. I think it's the oldest brand that we still have in production today, or 1813. It's 1803 or 1813. I can't remember. But having 3 out of the 4 oldest brands in existence today that are still under manufacturing, there's a lot of rich history there. And with history, we make mistakes. You learn from them. You try not to do them again. Now, over the generations, sometimes those mistakes need to be made 2 or 3 times. But you always want to learn from them, and we've made a lot of them. But we also grew from them, and that's why we're one of the largest in the industry and produce some of what I feel is some of the greatest cigars in the industry. So with that, we always want to try and stay ahead of what everybody else is wanting to do. We're trying to stay above that bell curve, but having the youth come in, and we've got some younger generation in our marketing department, trade marketing, and we want to stay in that bell curve of social media, staying in front of people, but not forgetting the history of the one-on-one interaction. Did I freeze you? No,
No. I'm sharing the show and listening. So that we're bringing in a few more people.
For all those listening, we froze up earlier, and it was my connection because I'm currently in Houston. So, or no, I'm sorry, not Houston, Ohio, Columbus. So
look at that, guys. He travels so much he doesn't even remember where he's at.
I know. I got to ask my wife, and she asked me, she's like, "Where are you?" I'm like, "I don't know. Hold on. Let me look at my maps, and here's where I'm at." But it's because I love what I'm doing. I'd rather remember the account and not remember where the hell I'm at, because it's a social business, and that's where we like to stay involved in that social side. But in production, in manufacturing, we have open lines of communication with the marketing team putting the cigars together that people are going to be not only looking for now, but new releases what they'll be looking for in 6, 8, 12 months from now, 14 months from now, 24 months from now. We've actually got our plot plan for 2 years on where the trends are going and what people are looking for.
So Altadis is nobody's going to be able to say that Altadis is going to get left behind being an older company. They're evolving with every generation and staying up to date to be the most competitive and reach out to the most people, right? Because it's not really important that you're the oldest brand. It's about what the brand is doing to stay relevant. Would you agree?
100%. I mean, if you had a can of beans on the shelf and it was really dusty, but the company's not around anymore, not real relevant. But you look at some of these companies out there, Bush's Baked Beans, and whoever, every generation that comes in or every time they come out, they're trying to stay ahead of that curve. They're trying to just come up and create new things. Well, we're doing the same thing, utilizing different fermentation techniques and curing techniques that we see may adapt into different plants and different tobaccos that are coming in through varietal, generational, new generations of plants coming in, hybriding and new plant varieties that are being introduced. It's now learning the curing and the fermenting that goes on with that and what works best when it comes to the temperatures and how long to get the most out of that leaf. So every crop year, the crops are always going to be different every year. So it's almost for every manufacturer, it's almost a game of what do we need to do to this to keep that same level we were at before, or maybe throw us a little curve and do something different on a new blend. But don't forget, the new blends aren't just the one, it's also your existing blends, like our Monte Cristo White Label and Romeo Reserve Real, two of the biggest brands we have by volume of cigars. Most everybody that is on the show is at one time smoked a Monte Cristo White Label or Reserve Real in one or multiples. So you got to get those very consistent year after year. And the only way you do that is by having master blenders that know their tobaccos and able to keep them even, if that makes sense.
So I've heard a lot of people say that, the tobacco is different from year to year. And obviously that makes sense, right? Crop yields aren't the same from year to year as planting in your backyard. Tomatoes come in differently if you do stuff. So, what kind of level of effort lift goes into effectively more or less, and correct me if I'm wrong, reblending the new tobacco to be as close to the original blend every year? And you have to do that with every line.
If you think of a Toro 54 by 6 cigar, you're probably going to have 4 or 5 filler leaves in there, and you're going to have a half a binder and a half a wrapper. So in essence, you could have up to 6 leaves in there or 7 different varieties. Every single one of those, if that crop changes, we need to go in and do a slight tweak on it just to make sure that thing stays the same. That's why our factories get together every Thursday, and they can be sampling anywhere between 15 to 25 cigars and doing a grading sheet and filling out like tasting notes and different characteristics of it to make sure that this cigar hasn't changed on them. Now, when they get them, they're blind. They're getting a cigar that just like this is. If I held this up and said, what cigar do I have? Nobody's going to know it, right? They have to go through with not knowing the cigar, fill out these sheets, and then they go back and compile them and say, what was this code? The secretary brings the list over, and then we go through and we'll say, that was 1875. Is it matching what we've had in the past? So when the crops change, we can, in the fermentation, we can tweak it, but it really comes down to that section of the factory that not a lot of people know a ton about. They may have heard about it, but it's the grading. Yes, the fermentation is very important. The curing, very important. The growing is also very important. But if you don't separate the leaves out correctly, you're not able to make that consistent blend year after year after year by separating the size of the leaf, the color of the leaf, and the thickness, the actual thickness of the meat of the leaf in 7 different quadrants. And then just say one of those categories, let's say grade 1, we grade that into 3 more. So we're really separating them into 21 different categories by thickness, size, and thickness, size, and the color. that I got ahead of myself. So that all three of those now get segregated out. We are able to go with that blend that we put together originally and say, this was the original. We make it. It's like, okay, is it the same, or do we need to tweak it just a little bit by changing the size of the leaf slightly, or increasing one and decreasing another? It's a slight tweak in the blend. So it's not really reblending, it's just tweaking the blend.
So when you say tweak and you cut off like and please don't give away any sort of information you shouldn't. Obviously, I know you won't, but when you say tweak, are you talking about like trimming the size of a leaf to put in there because maybe it's too thick? Or
no? Remember when I mentioned we're going to grade those by size. It's literally like a 2 to 4 inch cigar or a tobacco. It's a 4 to 8 or 4 to 6, 6 to 10, 10 to 12, 12 and above. They have these grade segments. So if currently we're using a 4 to 6, let's just use graphic numbers. These aren't real numbers. But if we're using a 4 to 6 and we say, hey, this has changed, let's try that next size down. But we need to increase that volume, so we'll increase the volume of this tobacco to kind of compensate, depending on the flavor profiles that they both put out.
Okay, no, that makes sense. So obviously, as blends get tweaked each year, and Altadis produces new blends, new lines each year, how does Altadis's approach to the process of creating new cigar blends and lines, and what factors go into consideration during that creative process?
It all starts with kind of our marketing department, and looking at each brand manager will look at a particular brand, say H. Upman, and look at where we're at, look at the volume of cigars that have been sold over the last year, 18 months, 2 years, and say we're decreasing a certain volume spectrum. How can are we missing part of a mark, and filling in a cigar in a certain segment, whether it be a mild, medium, full body, a color sequence, if we're missing more of a blonde, or if we're missing more of a claro, a Colorado or a Maduro in color, certain flavor notes that might come into play. Can we fill in a new brand and substantiate a new brand, let it live its own life, but yet not take away or decrease anything from a brand that might be doing well, or it might uplift that brand? That's where they start to gather their information. And then once they've done their marketing research and said, this is where we need to go with it, then they're going to go through and say, okay, factory, or talk to Raphael or our team and say, we now need to build this cigar with these type of flavor notes and this strength level, maybe this color, these color spectrums. And from there, then they'll go in and start the manufacturing of a new blend and come up with potentially 20, 25 different blend possibilities. And then Raphael and myself and the team will all get together, smoke them, and go, yeah, no, yep, no, and pick out the hand select ones that we think we might want. And then each one of those blends will throw a tweak into it. Like, we want a little more of this out of this one, or maybe we want a little less of this and a little more of this out of this one. And then from there, then we could it's back and forth fashion until we come up with a blend that, like, the three that we think are really going to be good. And then we start to go and expand that tasting panel into where do we really want to go with this? Is this filling what the marketing department was looking for 18 months ago?
So as you guys are going through this process, obviously it starts in the marketing, like you said, but are there ever a point in time where a blend is created that Altadis is looking for a name? Meaning the blend comes first, where it was like they're just playing around, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh my gosh, this is great. And then the marketing team takes over, or does it always start in the marketing team?
No, our factories, and even Placencia and AJ, they've got time on their hands. I mean, when we create a blend, or whoever they're making a blend for, they've got time, and they have nothing but time, and they know their tobaccos. So the factory in the Dominican or Honduras, or the guys out in Nicaragua, they know their tobaccos better than anybody. They may get a special crop of tobacco that is like really unique, and they'll start to play with it to say, what can we do with this? And from there, they've sometimes created some really phenomenal blends. And it may be a limited run, or it may be a short run, a limited production kind of a deal. And it's that sometimes can come from the blenders themselves, who've got time to sit here and know their tobaccos and look at the tobaccos. Every time new crop blends or bales come in, they can say, oh man, this is a lot different. I want to do a secondary fermentation on this. Let's see what it does. Oh, I want to create this. And they'll start to tweak with those blends and just have fun with them. And then they'll come to marketing and say, guys, we've got this great stick that we thought is really going to do well. Do you see a fit in this? Or should we hold on to something like, and sometimes we'll make, let's just say 150,000, 250,000 cigars out of that one specific and say, stick it in the cedar room. We will eventually fit that into a limited production or limited run. And it may be 6 months down the road. It could be years down the road. We just don't know. Cigars can sit and just chill out. They'll get a little better.
Now, they get a little bit better to a point. So because you just made that comment about aging cigars, I have been told that tobacco ages faster, obviously, outside of the cigar, as far as changes faster. Once it's actually a cigar, it ages, the changes are a little slower, but it blends together kind of like a soup. When you do it over the night before and then eat it the next day, it's better, or chili.
It melts. It has time for the oils to melt together. Yeah.
So at what point in time do you hit your curve and you start to actually kind of go in reverse when you age a cigar at home? Because I've heard some people like try a 50-year-old cigar and they're like, yeah, it didn't really taste like anything. I'm sure it was a great cigar when it came out, but, and then you talk to some people where they're like, oh, 3 years. Beyond that, you start to lose a little bit. What is your opinion? And then what's Altadis's stance on aging?
Well, let me throw it into the wine category. Wines and cigars are really close to each other. They got a lot of that they mirror when it comes to retrospects in a lot of ways. In wines, you can go ahead and go, this is a ready to drink now wine. This won't get better with time. This won't get worse with time. It just, this is ready to be drunk now. And sometimes they're good now, but these are going to get a lot better and better with time. Sometimes it may be 3 to 5 years. Sometimes it may be 15 years. In the tobacco world, it's going to depend on the thickness of the tobacco, what strain and variety of tobacco, what the breakdown rate is, the decomposition of that leaf, whether in cigar or non-cigar form. And I mean, there's a ton of variables that go into it. So you can't say this cigar, 3 years across the board, because I don't care who you are. You hand me a Connecticut that's, let's just say 5 years old. Okay. Connecticut's not going to be that good because that leaf, that wrapper leaf, is so thin to begin with that it's going to start to deteriorate and the oils are going to dissipate out pretty quickly. Where something that's a little thicker, something has maybe a little more thicker fillers, where it'll hold up those binders and wrappers. They'll give them some extra life. You may say those are good through 5 years. Excuse me. So it's really not an easy question because it's up to the individual cigar that's being made.
What's the oldest cigar you've ever smoked?
At home, I've got I think my oldest in the house is 2017 or 19. I have to look at my sheet again, but 2017, 19. I've done a 15, but it was last year, last summer. I did a 2015 cigar, and it had lost its luster at that point. It had kind of gone away. And
so
my 19s, I know are
the 2015 cigar, you most likely had that as well in 2015, and then again years later. Yeah,
but my I've got 99 opuses, and I hate to bring up, but I wasn't in the industry for the company at the time, but I've been buying boxes of Opuses for every year. I'll buy a box just to sit on. And I've been sitting on this 99 since 99, when it was manufactured shortly after. I picked it up, and I tell you what, it was great in one time, but then there's that curve, right? It's done this, and it's still good, but it's just not as good as it was at its peak. But even some of our own brands, I've got ones that go back to the early 2000s that I still enjoy. So going back to like 99, 97, 99 is about my oldest that I currently have. I think it's the 99s.
So if somebody's watching the show that's really into aging or really into letting your cigars sit, and they're into Altadis brands, the Monte Cristos, Romeo and Juliette, what, in your opinion, is the best Altadis lines that age well?
If you can still find them, the Romeo San Andres is really good. I think it does really well with age. The one I'm smoking right now, the H. Upman Heritage, I've got some of the first production runs, and it is doing nothing but just getting better and better and better and better. Yeah, I have to think about it. If anyone still has the Romeo and Yejos, those are still doing extremely well. The Romeo and Yejo, just that broadleaf is still got a ton of oil to it, so it's doing extremely well too.
Now, do you recommend having somebody, if they ask you aging questions, would you recommend a separate humidor kept at a separate humidity and maybe temperature over their everyday humidor?
100%. 100%.
Why? And then what is your temperature and humidity regulation or recommendation?
Well, you think about something that what does something need to start decomposition, which is natural, right? You need something that's dead, and you need moisture. So in your aging humidor, you want to lower that humidity level down. And I prefer to actually keep my temperature a little lower too, because it slows everything down. So when you're aging, you want to slow everything down just a little bit. In wines, you want to keep your regular everyday drink at like 55 degrees, and you want to keep your aging stuff right around 50, like 50 to 59, I think is the actual numbers. So cigars are the same way. You just want to lower that temperature, lower that humidity down a little bit, but keep it sealed. Don't go in there, every 2-3 times a week and expect that thing to stay perfect, because you want that as consistent as you can. So if I want to grab a special one, go in, grab a special one, but don't go in there like, 1, 3, 4, 5 times a week and start pulling some of these ages out, because that fluctuation in humidity the tobacco doesn't like that.
No, that makes sense. I have a glass front refrigerator style from New Air. And even at that, like I try to look through. So it's like, I feel like my dad sometimes, where I would sit there and open the refrigerator and just sit there and look. And he's like, that's the 3rd time you've opened the door today. Nothing's changed. You should know exactly where anything is. Grab it and shut the door.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too, with aging cigars, don't forget when you go in, you got to do rotations on them. You got to actually turn them and flip them and put them in different parts of the humidor. So like top to bottom or left to right, and move them around, but also turn them every 6 months. Like literally turn the bale, the box over, or turn the bundle over. Actually grab each stick and turn them over and say, this time all of them are going to be butt end up, and then this time all are going to be butt end or label facing up, label facing down. You know what I mean? Because remember that the moisture, when it gets in the cigar, there's about 13% moisture that's going to be held within the cigar itself. That moisture is going to start to collect. There's still gravity. So it's going to want to kind of come to the bottom. Well, you want to rotate that and just keep that movement of the moisture within the cigar moving around. So you want to hold them, keep them consistent. But remember, every 6 months, you want to go ahead and just do a flip-flop and then a relocation in case there's a little higher humidity or temperatures in different areas. So you're going to always keep that thing moving around. Just like we would do bales in the bale storage room. We move them around constantly, and we're flipping them over and and keeping them as fresh as we can.
So if somebody aged like this, at what point in time frame is a cigar sit and rested where it's considered aged? This has been resting in my humidor for a year and would probably in yours for longer. So like when would a cigar be considered aged in your opinion?
It is a manufacturer. And it doesn't matter who the manufacturer is, us or anybody. That word aged, that comes from our great people in marketing. Now, I think marketing individuals in the marketing world are great storytellers. They've got some wonderful stories that really help tell the stories. Sometimes a little too far. So I'll just leave that there. But an aged cigar, it's really there's too many variables that most people aren't going to have access to when was this one, the production rolled? How long has it been sitting in the cedar room? What were the temperatures? What were things going on? If you're a really big nerd, you want to know that kind of information. But if you're just a nerd like me, and like, when was this thing rolled? How long was it in the cedar room? That's good information because you want to know when that compression happened in the baling. In the bunching. When you make the bunch, you're going to put that tobacco and put it into a tray and compress it. Put it under pressure. So you put that under pressure. That's why you said the leaf is different outside the cigar as opposed to inside the cigar. Well, that's because you're putting that leaf, you're compressing that stuff down. You're putting it under slight amount of its own pressure. That's where that pressure helps resist some of that decomposition. But there's too many variables to say this is an aged cigar. Now, every tobacco leaf, I'm going to say a Connecticut is aged after it's a couple of years after fermentation, like 3 years after fermentation. I can say that's an aged Connecticut. You go 5 years, 6 years, now you're saying you best be probably smoking these things. If it's a U.S. Connecticut shade, because that's a very thin leaf and it doesn't decompose slowly. It's a fairly quick decomposition time. But if you said, hey, it's a Habano out of Ecuador or even Nicaragua at Esteli using Habano leaf, that's going to be a fairly staunchy, thicker type leaf with a lot of dark, rich oils, and that'll last you a lot longer. So you can say that's aged at, 5 years, 7 years. I mean, the variables could really vary. But I say, grab a dozen or grab a half a dozen. Smoke one in a year, smoke one in 2 years, and just see how they do. Unless that's a blend you like and you've trusted that you like it, grab a box, smoke one a year, and just see where time goes with it. Write little notes and put them on the bottom. I'll take the bottom of the box, flip it over, and I'll grab a pen and just start writing notes. This year, 2023, I smoked this on this month, and here's the notes I got out of it. All right, put it away. And then I send a reminder. I'm a nerd, but I'll set a timer on my calendar and say, you need to smoke this one. And it'll tell me a week before I need to smoke it. And then I'll pull one out. I'll let it sit in my regular humidor for a week. And then I'll grab it out of my regular humidor and smoke it a week later.
Right there. I always knew I consider myself to be a cigar geek nerd as well, but setting calendar dates on your phone and in 10 a week, that's something I hope to achieve, that level of nerdism and geekism someday, Travis.
Are you happy with your nerdism?
Amazing.
Grasp it.
I love
and enjoy it.
So we have a question from Bruce here. He says, do you recommend aging in the box or take out of the box? Same question about cellophane.
I think I can answer that on Wood, and I said I keep notes on the bottom of the box. I keep in the box because it helps create a atmosphere that's a little more regulated. You get your regulation on the whole humidor, but then you become a micro climate, if you will, because you're reducing down the effects of the outside because it takes more from the outside and the change to affect what happens on the inside of that box. And then cellophane. I leave cellophane on everything. And if someone says, take it out of the cellophane, well, oh my God, I got to take it out of the cellophane. That's great if you bought one brand and one brand only, and you put it in a humidor, and that's your aging humidor, and that's it. Because you don't want the oils from a Habano cross-transferring over to a Sumatran. And if you take the cellophane off, now they're sitting side by side, touching, exchanging fluids, if you will.
Touching sticks.
Exchanging, yes, touching sticks. Now you just went there, didn't you? But
this is a family show, Travis. Let's keep it clean.
When you don't want to have them touching oils. Those oils that can cross transfer will affect each one of them, right? And then you just start all this cross transferring, and not to mention cellophane. If people don't realize that cellophane is not plastic. It's not. People think it's plastic because it's clear, it's translucent, you can see through it, but it's actually paper. It's made out of wood. It's porous. It can breathe. So leaving them in the cello, it can still breathe, but it's not going to breathe at a exact same rate as a humidor would if it dropped humidity all of a sudden. It'll hold some of that humidity within the cellophane. It's going to slowly leach itself out, but slowly, not immediately like the humidor might have. So I keep them in the cello just in the event that I might be traveling around the country. You never know, right? And all of a sudden my humidor goes down and my wife's going to go, I don't know nothing about this. So, okay, it gives me time to get home and do the recovery that I need in the cigars. Plus, I don't like my Maduros affecting what my Connecticut's might taste like.
No,
you crack yourself up, don't you?
I do. I just had a thought in my head, and I'll just leave it there. So the other way, so true or false as well. I've heard this. The other benefit of leaving it in the cello is if by some chance there are beetles, when beetles eat the cello, they die. True or false?
It's hard for them to get through. They don't. I mean, if they try and get through, they will kill them. But it's a lot of times they want to get right to tobacco. They'll bounce around until they get to tobacco. If you've got beetles, I mean, God bless you, you weren't doing your job ahead of time, because you should always freeze your cigars. I don't care who the manufacturer is, myself or anybody. I personally want to make sure that my investment that I've made in these cigars, because it's an investment into a hobby, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that hobby lasts me through the end, whatever that might be. If I get to smoke all my cigars before I die, it means I've lived a long, long life. But if not, I know my friends around me, they're going to celebrate my life by smoking my cigars. So I want to make sure they're good for them. But making sure there's no bugs in there, yes. Put them in your refrigerator for 2 days. Put them in your freezer for 5 days. Pull them out of your freezer, put them back in the refrigerator for 2 days. Put them in a separate humidor and slowly bring that humidity back up to where you need to. Because you got to think of how refrigerators work, is they're going to suck the moisture out of the air, cool it, and blow it back into the refrigerator or freezer. So it will diminish some of the humidity that's in your cigar, and it's going to drop that humidity or the percentage of water that's in the tobacco. So you want to reintroduce that and then slowly bring that back up.
Now, if somebody does have beetles, what is your recommendation for a fix? Are they screwed depending on how bad they are, or like what would be Travis's Beetle 101 recommendation?
Well, I don't have the 101 because it's really going to be up to the individual. Some people are going to go, man, there have been beetles in there. First thing I do is want to kill them. So if you get beetles, you put them through the freezing process. Put them in a Tupperware so they don't have a chance to get out. Put them in your fridge. Put them in a freezer. Deep freeze them, and then for 5 days, pull them back out. Let them slowly be introduced to the refrigerator, then slowly be brought up to room temperature. That at least killed any beetles that are in there. But if you want to smoke them, if they only have one pinhole and you can cut the end of your cigar and you cut the cap, not the cap off, but cut the end of it, you always got that little piece of wrapper that's on there. Okay, it's wet, moist. I'll carrot and I'll cover the hole. As long as it doesn't form an air gap in there, I'll try and save it. Like I said, it's an investment for me. Is it going to be the best? No, I mean it's always going to be there, but the actual dead beetle that's sitting in there, that ember burning is going to put a nice little smoke on them, and then I'm going to roast them.
So as long as it's doesn't look like Swiss cheese, they're salvageable.
Correct. Could be. I mean, it's up to the individual, but yeah, they could.
Now, when this happens in somebody's humidor, do you recommend freezing everything in the humidor, or just what they see as affected, and then clean the humidor? Like, what is your decontamination process?
I'll freeze everything. First thing I'll do is throw that freezer in the when I'm put the cigars in the fridge. I'll take the humidor. If it'll fit in the deep freeze, I'll put it in the deep freeze. I'll freeze it for only about 3 days. Then I'll bring it back in, alcohol the inside wood, let that lid sit open for at least a day, let that vaporize out. And then I'll take the moisture and I'll reintroduce moisture back into it, making sure I've got no off gases. Then when your cigars are ready, once you reintroduce moisture back into that cigars, you've got your humidor now restabilized to a consistent humidification level. Then you can reintroduce your cigars back in, but it's nothing but time. It's going to take you a month or two to get over something like that, to try and recoup and get everything back ready to go.
And it could be devastating to hundreds to thousands of dollars, depending on where the spread. And, my humidor is a whole lot less expensive than probably your stash as far as like quantity of cigars. So a hit for you could be a lot more costly than mine. So definitely take all the precautions possible to save that investment. Like you said, it's investment into a hobby.
Yeah. Now, I don't know what your investment looks like, but my investments, I got a whole lot of bundles. I got bundle cigars coming out the kazoo. That was a really bad joke, by the way, folks. There's a daddy joke right there for you. But it's up to the individual. But again, I keep multiple humidors. I don't keep one big one where everything goes in. I've got like 1, 2, 3, 4 aging humidors at the house, and I'm talking the larger size, like the refrigerator size one you got. Probably it's pretty good size. But I keep that one maintained. If I have an issue with that one, I'm not affecting all of them. And then my everyday just grabs and goes and things like that. I keep multiple of those. And you walk into my cigar room and you're going to see like humidor on top of humidor on top of humidor. And, it's been 2 months. It's probably better check these Bovedas I got sitting in there. And I go, oh, well, I better start calling, get some of these sent out to me, and I'll start getting Bovedas replaced. So.
Okay. Cody asks a question, and let me take a crack at this first to see if I can answer this. Should we do this for all cigars, even if you get them from a brick and mortar? And I think he's asking about freezing them. I think if it's a reputable brand, like Travis had said, probably not. But maybe in the Cuban world, because I don't know the quality control of the Cuban brands, and I know Altadis USA is the same Altadis in Cuba, so maybe you can speak to this.
No,
but
they don't have Altadis in Cuba,
or not the H. Upman and stuff like that. They still own those lines. It's all owned by Altadis, is what I meant. So maybe you could speak.
Sister company.
Yeah, and maybe you could speak to this. Do Cubans get that same freezing quality control? Because you always do hear more on the quality control problems of the Cubans than you do the New World cigars.
Let me just put it out this way, that even if I were to walk in and buy one of my own product from a brick and mortar store, and I trust all brick and mortar stores, but you don't know when an issue comes in until it's almost become an issue. If I'm buying a cigar that's going to be in my aging humidors, they're going to be frozen. Even if it's my own, if I bought a box of the H. Upman Heritage, and I said, hey, I want to age these, I want to see what they do, and I'm buying it from brick and mortar, I'll still grab them and I'll freeze them just to make sure. that I'm doing my due diligence to make sure
Really?
the rest of my investment's not going to be screwed up, because you don't know what that retailer, that brick and mortar store, they get a box in from a manufacturer. They're hoping and they're really doing their due diligence to make sure that it is done properly. But if something happened on their back end that is not known, and all of a sudden it gets out, beetles get out, and all of a sudden they're getting out there. You get one beetle in a box, well then guess what? Now you're going to potentially have a cluster down the road. I'm going to do my diligence to make sure they're frozen if I'm putting them in an aging. There again, if they're my everyday regular smokes that I just go in every day and grab 2 or 3, and I think that last me throughout the day, that's a different story. I wouldn't go through the effort to freeze them all. It would just be for my aging humidor.
So specifically those that you intend to hold on to and age, you would go through that process.
Mm-hmm. Every single time.
So
no disrespect to Fuente or some of the other great brands that I'll put in my aging humidor. I do it to everybody, even ours.
Okay. That's interesting. I've never heard that before. And you're right. I've never actually looked at cigars as an quote unquote investment. But it is. You're investing in that, and it's an expensive hobby, and do the necessary steps to maintain that hobby and to the highest quality that you can.
But is it an investment into a cigar, or is it an investment for a moment in time where I get to actually enjoy my life with a cigar, the people I'm around, the family, my friends? I'm investing in my time, and my time is a smoke that I'm smoking with my friends. So that's how I look at cigars, as really a vessel for a moment in time, as opposed to I'm just smoking a cigar.
No, absolutely. And Travis actually gave me some great advice about a year or so ago. And I was asking him, I was like, I'm sitting here looking at this cigar, and I forgot what cigar it was. I'm like, I'm sitting here looking. Oh, it was the Opus X Lanceros that Manny Ariati sent me. And I'm like, I'm talking to you. I'm like, I'm sitting here looking at these cigars. I want to smoke them, but I love knowing they're in my humidor. And you're like, well, have you ever had one before? And I was like, no. You're like, so if you died 3 hours from now, you would never know what they smoked, like never know what they tasted. He goes, why are you sitting on them? Smoke them. Like, don't hold them for the perfect moment, because you might never actually get the chance to smoke it. And I've taken that to heart, man. I smoke my nicer ones more often, because why am I holding on to a cigar that I paid money for a perfect event when I might not get the opportunity?
Well, if that 3 hours from now happens, hopefully your next of kin says, that Travis was the last guy on the show. He has first crack at the humidor.
That'll be in my will
tomorrow. I'll be out. I'll tell you. I hope I never have to, though. I'm not
no, Jesus, right? No, absolutely not, absolutely not. But if it does happen, everybody look to Travis first, just in case.
Yeah,
maybe there's some foul
down to South
play.
Florida. Come on down to South Florida. We'll hold on a second. What'd you give me? Oh shit! Conundrum. Charles is with me. I'm out here in Ohio with him, and he says, "Ice cream, cigar,
ice cream, mix them, wash it down."
No, I'm gonna finish my cigar. Yeah.
So, being that we're on, quality control, Altadis obviously has a very great reputation of producing very high quality cigars consistently. Can you shed some light on the quality control process that Altadis puts in place, and is it different? Yeah, go ahead.
If you want to sit and just chill back, you might be able to pick some few things up. Just saying. Charles was like, man, you look like you're having too much fun. I can't handle this. And yeah, good guys. I want to keep them around me. I feed off people that have good energy. So
absolutely.
There he is, right there.
Hey, Charles, nice to see you.
He can't hear you because I got the earbud in, but
that's right. That's right.
but that's all right.
So,
but your question, I'm sorry again.
yeah, so obviously Altadis has a very great reputation of producing very high quality, consistent quality cigars. Can you kind of shed a little bit of light on the quality control process that Altadis implements? And if you know, are you able to shed a little bit of light on if that quality control process or what the differences are between the Cuban lines?
I can't really touch on the Cuban lines, but
Okay.
what I can tell you is I know from at least from our factories, our Dominican and our Honduran factory, and stuff that we do with AJ and Nestor or Placencia, they will in our factories, we actually have multiple grading stations, anywhere from tobacco delivery and bale to the fields that we use them from, in making sure that the pesticide levels are as low as possible. And we actually are half of the pesticides that are being used on our tobaccos. They're half of what the FDA allowable is. So we're proud to say that we don't like to use them. We like to use alternative methods like sunflower and corn and various other crops around it. So once it comes in, we'll check bales. We'll do the inspections when they're doing the grading process. Then when they go from grading, we'll go through another inspection when they put them in stacks that they can use to weigh the tobaccos out for manufacturing. Then in manufacturing, I believe we're still one of the only that do draw testing on every single cigar that comes out of our factory. And what I mean by that is when we make the bunch, we put them in the tray, in the mold, we press them. But once it's pressed, that binder should seal that cigar up. So we're going to draw test the airflow using vacuum to bring that air through, and how much resistance on that airflow going through is. We have a very small margin of allowable, so that when that airflow going through is too tight or too loose, we'll just take that cigar, we'll break it in half, and we'll sell that to a mass market company, to somebody else. We aren't going to use it anymore. But we want to make sure that the cigar, when you pick it up out of the retail brick and mortar stores or online or whoever, that they're going to say this cigar draws perfect. If it doesn't, they're going to not look at the brand first. They're going to look at the retailer first. Like, you sold me a shit cigar. And we don't want that. We want to make sure that that brand name and that retailer are synonymous with a high quality product. So that initial draw testing every single cigar is important to us, because we want to make sure that it is drawing perfect. And then from there, multiple stages, from color coding to inspections on the wrapper, making sure it's not wrinkled, stretched. It's got the right numbers of wines around it, and weight inspections. We'll actually go through and do weight inspections throughout the process. We'll pull tobacco and cigars out on a random basis. We have one guy in each of our factories. That's all he does. He'll sit in the aging room and he'll just start pulling cigars. Weigh them. Do they meet the criteria or our guidelines for a 54 by 6 ring gauge? It has a certain gram weight scale. So we go through a lot of checks and balances in the cigar business, and we go through a lot of waste, unfortunately, because sometimes reactions or rolls, things like that. Stuff happens. It's part of manufacturing. We don't want that in the box going to the retail stores for the customers to consume.
Now, at what, and I'm going to ask this in a way that I think the average consumer would understand. At what dollar amount are your rollers the best? Meaning, at what dollar amount value that is a $15 cigar, meaning your top end rollers are rolling that cigar only? Does that question make sense?
Does the value of the cigar or the tobacco equal to the skill level at which the rollers are rolling?
Obviously, to a point, yes.
Up to a point, yes. Because when we're talking the cost of tobacco, especially wrapper leaf, is very important. When you're paying the super top tier in pricing when it comes to the wrapper leaf, which is the most expensive leaf in the whole cigar, you want to make sure you have a roller that can not damage and mess that up. Like, if they have an overstretch, or if we have to continually throw cigars away, it's going to be affected. But that doesn't mean we can't say, hey, we're low production on a retail of a $13 to $17 cigar, we can't take any of our people and grab the ones that aren't doing like machine bunch or when I say machine bunch, I mean like the mix fill style cigars. Once they graduate and they have a consistency on that, we'll put them on a budgetary cigar. And then once they graduate budgetary, it's like $7 and up. They can all kind of do this job. But the one caveat to that would be like when people are in the specialty rolling department, rolling your bellicosos, your figurados, your elongated figurados, lanceros, coronas, mini cigars, and things that are a long fill, smaller ring gauges, or specialty tip ends. Then you require specialty bunchers, specialty wrappers, because they do wrap and roll differently when you're manufacturing.
And from first day to I'm now rolling premium, obviously it depends on the person, their skill level, the ability to pick it up, their attention to detail. On average, what is that time frame for somebody that's dedicated in the for somebody that's dedicated in the factory to get to that level? Is it 5 years, 10 years, 2 years?
2 years. I'd say average probably 2 years, yeah.
Because they're rolling thousands of cigars a year. So they're getting that practice. So
they're getting the practice, but it's muscle memory. It's it's like any job. Some people have the skill set to be able to do that. I mean, to do what I do, you need years of experience. I had the passion behind it. I could jump right in. It just depends on the individual. But I would say on average, you're probably looking about 2 years from beginning to when they can start doing your standard $7 and up cigars. It'll be pretty good. But they may have, if they rolled in another factory before, it's detraining them to retrain them the way we do things. Because every manufacturer may have little nuances on the binder filler bunch or the wrapper roll, the way they do it. We all have little things that we like to see done our way that makes ours unique and different.
Okay, now Cody, who you know very well as well, Cody asks a question. He said you had mentioned about overstretching the leaf. What do you mean by overstretching the leaf?
Well, when you roll a cigar, you're literally laying the tobacco down on the table and you're going to stretch it just a little bit, because the binder filler is right around 10% moisture content. It's a little on the drier side. The wrapper could be as high as like 19. We add more moisture, which adds more pliability into that leaf. If you took I had a red maple when I lived down in Castle Rock, and if I took one of those red maple leaves and it was dried out, it's very crumbly. You just barely touch it, it's going to break. Well, if I reintroduced moisture back into it, sprayed it with some water, stuck it in a plastic bag or sealed it, and I left it for a few days, it's going to reintroduce moisture back into that leaf. That leaf then can become pliable again. Tobacco is identical to that, right? It's the leaf. So the more moisture, the more pliability you have. You can actually take that wrapper leaf, lay it on a table, and you can stretch it just a little bit. But there are times when you can overstretch it. You can just stretch it a little too far than it needs to be. You roll the cigar, you lose that 19%. It's going to shrink a little bit, and those overstretched lines or those wrinkle lines start to come in, and it'll pop on you. I mean, there's the wrinkles are really like it was tight here, but it wasn't tight there, and the wrinkles can start to come in.
So it's kind of like pizza dough in the sense that you could overstretch it and tear the leaf. And that's essentially the same way, or overstretch the dough, make it too thin. And then in the process, you're putting a hole in it or what?
I was going to say, I've never stretched a piece of dough and had a leaf pop out. I mean,
I cross-blend, but it's that same concept as you could only stretch dough so far. You could only stretch that leaf so much, and its elasticity will give. So all right, obviously Altadis has a huge presence all over the world. Internationally, they've got the Cuban line, everything.
Altadis doesn't.
Well, no, their sister company. They're in the same family.
Okay.
So obviously the name is essentially what I was getting at. Like everybody knows the name globally, whether it be through Cuban or New World, quote unquote. Okay. How does Altadis USA manage that international community And meaning how do they manage other countries and the US? Is it differently? Is the US take any kind of preferential treatment, or does that question make sense?
So globally, the name Monte Cristo, do the teams work together to fill what's needed?
Yes.
No.
So there is no connection, even internationally.
Nope. The reason is because of the international trade agreements. What's made for the U.S. market is only available in the U.S. market under anything that's got a Cuban heritage name to it cannot be sold inside the U.S. because it's Cuban, or outside from the U.S. We can't sell the brands here internationally because it has a Cuban heritage name. There's a Cuban cigar that's made with it, so we can't sell the U.S. versions outside the U.S.
Oh, so you can't go to Germany and buy a U.S. version of an H. Upmann?
That H. Upmann heritage I'm smoking, you could not buy in any other country outside the U.S. and Puerto Rico. You can buy that H. Upmann heritage in Puerto Rico.
I had no idea.
Now, brands like Vega Fina, Aging Room, I mean, there's brands out there that do not have a Cuban tie, Butera. They don't have a Cuban heritage or a Cuban tie to it. So at that point, it would be an international brand, and that could be, sold internationally and domestically.
Okay, so that's interesting. See, I never knew that. I didn't realize that essentially Altadis USA is sectioned off more or less for the US unless it's a non-Cuban brand.
Well, that's what makes the US
non-Cuban
really neat, because if you think about the US brands, we're in 2017, I pulled the importation numbers globally, like the global production of cigars that were sold around the world. The number was 66.67% were bought and sold in the US. We're driving that bus. We're driving the cigar bus. Everybody around the world wants your cigars that you can buy here in the United States just as much, if not more, than we want Cuban cigars, believe it or not. Too many people are hung up with, I can't get Cubans, so they got to be better. Don't get me wrong. There are some good Cubans that I've tried when I'm outside the United States. And there's some that I'm like, really? I just don't get it. I got a $6 cigar and not a $30 cigar internationally, buying a Cuban cigar for $30. I got a $6 cigar that I can pick up in the shop that's mine or anybody's that's as good or better than what you're getting international. So it's if people can just get off of the oh my God, I gotta have a Cuban. They're the greatest in the world. Yeah, they've got the history because that's where it all kind of stemmed from, and even in the beginnings, it was all Cuban, right? But our U.S. consumers, they're too damn demanding. They want perfection and they want the greatest. And manufacturers of cigars outside of us and everybody that makes cigars, we all want to get in the U.S. We all want to sell to the U.S. because we know that that's where the larger number is. So if you're going to create a cigar and you want to sell, you're going to go to the U.S. first. You're not going to say, I want to make it for Spain, and then I want to come into the U.S. No, if you're a smart businessman, you're going to sell where the volume is. And that's right here in the U.S. 2/3 bought and sold in the U.S. That's where you go. So we're going to make cigars that you all want, and you guys are too demanding and too perfect, which I love, because that makes us step up our game and make better and better and better and better cigars every year.
Now, on the thing that you said, step up your game, being that Altadis is definitely has some of the oldest brands, if not the oldest brands in the cigar world today. How has Altadis and the rolling side, I assume technology hasn't changed a whole lot, correct? Like
none.
Maybe the question isn't even worth asking. So then how does Altadis make sure they're staying true to the original roots of how cigars were blended and rolled?
Well, if you go back to the early 1800s, I think 1813, I think was the oldest brand under the Cuban registry. Cuban Cigar Registry, I think the oldest brand is a brand called Cabañas, and that's actually owned by my sister company. But having 4 out of the 5 oldest brands in the Cuban Registry, we've learned a lot of mistakes. But if you go back to those 1800s, I mean, that was not the techniques that we use today to get the good draw out of it at every single cigar, and the consistency, the draw testing that we can now do to make sure that those cigars are perfect. Back then, it was, it's kind of like our other side of the pond down in South Florida, just a little skip and jump over the water.
Hit or miss.
Yeah, right. So with us, I know, like I speak for our brands, I know that, we are strive to have that perfect cigar. When you open that box, you're going to get 20 or 25 or whatever that number is inside the box. Everyone's going to be perfect. So we've gained a lot of knowledge, but we've made the mistakes to learn all that stuff over the last, hundreds of years.
Now, everybody, if you buy one of these brands and they're not perfect, Travis's cell phone number's in the description below. Just reach out to him. No, I'm just kidding.
If you get voicemail, don't feel bad. I will call you back. I just didn't say when.
So obviously you've been in the cigar world for a very long time. You're probably one of the most well, I should say this. Your knowledge is vast and wide in the cigar world. And you're one of the people that I definitely rely on for the knowledge of what you've smoked in the past and to now. And collaborations have been something that Altadis has done through various lines with AJ at the Monty and so on and so forth, Placencia. Is there a collaboration that you would love to see, and who would it be with?
Well, remember, I'm education and knowledge on my end. The blending, I mean, there's a lot of blenders that I'd love to work with. I mean, there's so many different talents within the business that I don't think I could throw a stick at Pro Cigar and not hit somebody I wouldn't mind working with. Pro Cigars, if those who don't know, is a Dominican cigar festival, and that's where a lot of the major manufacturers come from the Dominican, or even Nica Fest, Puro Sabor. I couldn't throw a stone and not hit somebody 3 or 4 people in the head that I would say I would love to work with them, because the talent is immense, and they all have such great talents that I would love to work with any of them. I mean, they're all neat people in this business.
So obviously, with everybody talking, global warming and sustainable this and sustainable that, what is Altus's take on sustainability in the cigar world, in the tobacco industry?
Well, we do a lot with sustainability. I mean, there's not any tobacco that goes through our factory that we do not use or sell to be used in something. That's not only good for the environment, but it's also very good for our pocketbook, because we're able to keep the cost down on cigars, so you can get a ultra premium cigar for an affordable price. I mean, that's kind of what Monte Cristo is based off of. You got this really ultra premium type of cigar, but it's affordable. It's an affordable kind of a niche that we like to keep ourselves in. And the only way you can do that is by keeping the cost down and keeping smart with your costs. The other part of it is in our fields. When you have to bring tobacco from this part of the field and you're going through your priming, you have to carry it over to this part. Well, we've made bags using 100% natural products. When we take in and make the bunch, which is 20 leaves that you put together and you tie them off to put in bales, each one of those, we tie those off with natural pieces of fiber. We don't like to use synthetic and ropes and things like that, because you never know. Sometimes those can get through, and you don't want those to get into a cigar. Now, we've never had it, even when we were using it, because of all the checks and balances we go through. But I've heard of manufacturers saying, hey, God, I pulled this out of this cigar. Here's what it is. We like to use, if something does get through, we want it to be natural. We want it to be 100% natural. So we try and do our best to keep the environment in mind, along with when we talked about fertilizer. We fertilization, herbicides, pesticides. We try and do as much natural style of fertilization and herbiciding that we can, because the less herbicides we use, the less unnatural minerals that we put into the ground, we're going to save that part of the field and make that plant even better years and years and years down the road. So it helps the environment long term. Plus the river runoff, and you have fertilizers that do run off into the river water. They can help affect the water tabling and the stuff that goes into the water. We don't want that. We don't want to have the responsibility of affecting that.
So with corn is a huge, and this is going to show my Midwestern Illinois roots here. Knee-high by the, yeah, right. Knee-high by the 4th of July for corn. If with corn is a leach, meaning it leaches a lot from the ground, which is why they rotate with soybean or another legume.
Mm-hmm.
Does that play into for tobacco as well, as in, like, is there crop rotations, and what crops are grown to provide the nutrients back into the soil?
Kind of a two-part question. Your first part is do we do any kind of cover cropping, or
But you've never been asked this one before.
Nutrient replenishment.
Yes.
Most everybody we work with in the tobacco industry does some sort of a cover cropping. I know in Connecticut there's some years we may want to do winter wheat, but that's going to depend on what the soil tests come back at the end of the harvest, or like 2 weeks out, so we can start to plan and buy seed for it. But we'll test the ground and see what kind of nutrients do we need to replenish with. And winter wheat, that can just sit in the ground all year. It's dead by come springtime. We till that back in, and then that decomposition, those nutrients go back into the earth. We also use like a large rutabaga or root. Looks like a really big carrot. I mean, the thing is probably 3 feet in length and can be a foot and a half in width at the biggest end.
Wow.
But we use that for when we do that. I mean, probably about a foot. I mean, it's pretty good size. But we do that to help gap the earth. So we go through to till those nitrogen, all that nutrients can go in there, not only mineral replenishment, but it also helps us in the tilling process come springtime at the first thaw. We need to start tilling that land in and get ready. But the other one is like, rye is another one that we use a lot in various fields. There's just a lot of different variety of different crops that can do different things. And depending on what part of the country or part of the world you're in, we can do various things. There was another part to that question too. What was it?
Do you guys do the crop rotations?
We don't really do crop rotations, but some variety of tobaccos do have to go through a farrow year. It's usually about every 4th or 5th year. But let your grow forward, leave it lay once to where you're not doing anything with it. You're not growing on it. You're not touching it. You're just leaving it alone. Broadleaf really doesn't have to do that. Broadleaf, you can grow every year, just continuous, but it doesn't pull out as much minerals out of the earth as, like, say, a Connecticut shade might, or Sumatra. Those can pull out a lot. Where the broadleaf is actually, it doesn't pull out as much, even though the leaf is a lot thicker and it has a lot more minerals involved with it. It just doesn't seem to affect the ground as much. So we don't have to let that lay fallow.
Interesting. So you guys leave plots wide open.
Yeah.
For a year. That's a big cost. And that's why that's interesting. I think that's a big expense to not grow something on a plot of land, because every foot of a farm has a value.
Do you think we're the only ones that do that?
No. I'm saying, like, I didn't realize that it was done in that way, where you would just leave a field empty. I figured there would be something on it to sell, even if it wasn't tobacco, was my point.
You gotta let the land rest.
So let's get a little geeky here. What is one of the biggest detriments to tobacco today? I know blue mold was really big years ago, and we kind of spray for it now. What's something that you guys are fighting now, unless it's still the same stuff? And if it is, just say it's the same.
It's always going to be the same thing. The infestation of bugs, various bugs that may come in and be different than they have been in the past. We're constantly on a bug patrol, if you will. Blue mold is still a factor. Don't let anybody tell you it's not. There's still a potential of blue molding or a rotting of the plant, and it'll devastate the whole field. So we have to really keep our eyes on it. And usually the high moisture years with lots of rain, we have to worry about that. It's just like any other agricultural product. The more you grow, and every year you got to stay on top of potential damages to the plant. And the other one is regular, I want to call them livestock, but any large animal or small vermin they get in there, like voles and weevils and deer, and they'll still want to eat tobacco. Heck, we're not the only ones that love it. Animals love it too.
Oh no, for sure.
It's got a nice sweetness.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So just picking up a question here from Cody. Cody asks, what is broadleaf? So as I will let you answer this question, can you also give him a cigar in your line that you would recommend for him to try?
Recommending cigar to see Henry Clay, just the standard Henry Clay uses the broadleaf, Romeo Añejo. We don't do a ton with broadleaf now because broadleaf has gotten, it's almost doubled in the last 3 years, two or 3 years. The price of broadleaf is almost doubled. So because of mass market cigars, your backwood, your Phillies, and it doesn't matter what the mass market cigar is. They all use broadleaf because it's very simple to grow, but they like that premium style out of it because it takes on flavors really easily. So with that, the premium leaf, it's just gotten so expensive that most manufacturers, we're just not willing to buy it. We've started planting like broadleaf in Honduras and Nicaragua and tried to get that to adapt in Honduras. We've done a really good job with it. Nicaragua is just, we're still trying. We're still trying to get that to adapt in. What is broadleaf? It's just a really, really large version tobacco plant that has a really big oil concentration, high sugar content. And it's one of the few harvesting plants where we don't actually do primings, and you take 2 or 3 leaves off the bottom, and then you wait 3 to 5 days, take 2 or 3 leaves off, wait 3 to 5 days. You slowly work your way up the plant, harvesting leaves. With broadleaf, you're going to, about 10 days before the end of the growth cycle, you're going to go ahead and chop that plant down about 3.5 feet in height. And then once we go that 10 days out, that leaf has gotten about 20% larger in the size and about 25% larger in the thickness of the meat of the plant. With that, you got a lot more sugar, a lot more minerals that go into it. And then from there, we'll cut that stalk down, take that stalk with the leaves, and we'll hang that upside down in the curing barn, let that thing cure over the course of 8 weeks, 8 to 9 weeks, to give or take. And then we'll take those leaves off, put them in hands of tobacco, and then process them further that way. But it just, as you go through curing, the liquid that's in the stalk drains down the vein or the stem, then the stem into the veins, and just super packs the broadleaf tobacco, making it just very big and rich. And if you see a U.S. grown leaf and it's really, really dark, it's going to be probably broadleaf.
Now, it also has a leathery kale-ish texture to it. Am I correct? From what I've seen people play with it.
Leathery, I would say yes. Kale, I don't even think I've ever seen or eaten or been near kale. I eat things that eat kale. I'm sorry.
Oh, that reminds me. So please tell me you've seen Parks and Recreation.
No.
The TV show. Oh, okay. So that should be a show on your list. Ron Swanson's the greatest TV character ever created, hands down. Solid libertarian in every way, and just works for the government for the sole purpose of slowing it down. And he was given a salad at a restaurant, and he looks at the waiter and he goes, "Why are you giving me food that my food eats?" That reminded me of that. But no, in all seriousness, man, put Parks and Recreation on your list, dude. It's
my daughter said the same thing, so I'm gonna have to.
Yeah, dude, it's the greatest thing ever. So before we get into a little bit more geekier questions, Bruce asks if you grow most of your tobacco as a company or do you source?
We grow quite a bit, but we also source quite a bit. I mean, we're a fairly large company, so there's no way in heck we could source it all. But we do rely on strong partners with farmers that we've worked with years after year, and companies like Oliva Leaf, not to be confused with Oliva Cigars. It's Oliva Leaf Company. We buy a lot from them because we know they've been doing this for years and years and years. But like in the Dominican, we work with the Mendez family. Then the factory that we have out there was started in 1972, where the Mendez family was doing their first harvest of production in 1971. So we've been working with them, and we buy everything they're willing to sell to us, which is virtually everything we can get. Ooh. All right, Ryan.
Yeah.
I don't know how long the show is, but we might have to cut her short because my battery's almost dead.
All right. Well, we'll go
close, but
no worries. We'll go until we can, and then we'll cut the show short. Not a problem at all. So let's get into an incredibly geeky question to maybe let's see.
I'm listening.
Here. Can you really elaborate on the fermentation process and why, when somebody tastes ammonia in a cigar, what does that mean? And I mean, really get geeky with it. Like what is going on inside that leaf during fermentation, and what does the sign of ammonia mean in a leaf?
Well, we got to go back a little further than fermentation. You got to go into the actual curing cycle. Now, you're not going to see me, but I'm plugging my computer in. So,
oh yeah, no worries.
I can still talk to you. So, in the curing cycle, remember, a leaf is made of something called chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is photosynthesis used to help turn CO2 or CO2O2 conversion. Well, that chlorophyll, when it goes through curing or the drying process, it actually turns that chlorophyll into an ammonia base. That ammonia is, hold on a second. Plug. Where's the plug? Sorry, everybody at home.
No worries, man. No worries.
So when that chlorophyll goes through the curing process, that chlorophyll will turn to ammonia. That ammonia then helps break that leaf down even further by extruding some of the oils that are in there. I hope that gave me power. Ooh, I hope so. Yep. All right. So that chlorophyll gets broken down to ammonia. That ammonia then helps break that leaf down further in the decomposition cycle. And that decomposition helps then extrude and pull out some of the oils that are in the leaf. Those oils are really what you're tasting when you're tasting a cigar. So we want those oils to be pulled out in there. Now, because they're really high ammonia based to them, when you go through and go through that fermentation phase, which is the decomposition further of that leaf, it helps create a heat source because that weight of that bale or they call it a palone or palone, that weight of that tobacco pushing itself down on top of itself, that heat can't get out, that decomposition creates. So that decomposition, as that happens, that heat builds up. And then once it hits a specific temperature, depending on the leaf, then we'll go ahead and take it, unstack it and restack it, let this stuff that was cool on the outside now become the inside, heat up, creating a full cycle that way. Ammonia doesn't like heat. So when you let those temperatures go up, it drives some of that ammonia out of it. But ammonia is always going to be in tobacco as long as it's younger than 5 years old after fermentation. So if we're done fermenting tobacco, we need about another additional 5 years to really age out any ammonias that are going to be in tobacco. So if that helps maybe understand ammonias and what they are, but things that you can say, this has got ammonia. If you're smoking a cigar, a lot of times the bitterness or the bite in the back of the throat, that's a good indicator that you've got a lot of ammonia going on. If you've ever had cats and you go to clean the litter box, cats are a very ammonia-driven urine cycle.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just to put it bluntly, cat piss. I mean, that's ammonia-based. If you've ever cleaned with ammonia, that's ammonia. I mean, you know what that space smells like. So you can sometimes smell it or taste it and go, God, there's a lot of ammonia in this. That just means the tobacco is really young.
Now, for those of you that don't know, Travis is diabetic, and there's certain flavors that he doesn't taste because he doesn't eat certain foods because he's a diabetic. Would you say that's fair?
Within reason. You just watch me eat ice cream, so I mean,
no, meaning like we've talked about this before. Chocolate's not a flavor that you get often because you don't eat a lot of chocolate.
Yeah.
What in the cigar determines the memorific flavors? I say memorific. I just invented that right now, that word. It's totally not a word. But what in the cigar is
just popped up and said, "What the hell is this?"
Yeah,
memory.
Right. What is in the cigar that gives those flavors that your memory constitutes as X, Y, or Z?
Well, remember, you're smoking a cigar. You're drawing this smoke through the cigar. That smoke is going to go over those oil pockets and the oils that are in the tobaccos, the wrapper being the most important. And as it goes over those, it's going to pick up some of those oils. The combination, once it gets into your palate and it's held on to your palate, then with the minerals that smoke is brought in from the oils, it's going to help create a memory of what you think those flavors are. They're not flavors that are put in. It is literally just a memory of what you think those are like. Now, obviously, you're going to hear like chocolates a lot with your darker cigars because they're rich. They have a richness to them. That reminds people of chocolates or coffees a lot. That's pretty consistent. But otherwise, it can kind of go all over the board. But there are times that it's a lot of consistencies out of them. Excuse me.
So how do rolling techniques at all inspire or give cause to a flavor in a cigar? Meaning, such as rolling entubado, accordion, or booking. Does that rolling style affect the flavors? Meaning, if I roll a cigar entubado and then I roll a cigar accordion, am I getting the same flavor profile and characteristics?
Nope, because the smoke is going to roll over the oils on the tobacco differently. Entubado, you're rolling them up on top of each other, that you can't get a full penetration of smoke going over every leaf at a different rate. It's the amount of smoke that goes over each leaf at different rates. Now, entubados are great flavor, but those are some are accordion fold. There's some great flavors out of those. You can even go as far as to say like an accordion, but you have a round cigar or a parejo, or you got a box press. Those can change flavor. So it'd be what the chef or the master blender, I like to call them chefs because that's really what they are, is those chefs are going to design that cigar, but they're going to play with it in different sizings, different, whether this fold or that fold in the filler, or I'm going to put this into a box press, or I'm going to put this into a parejo or a round cigar. It's going to depend on that master blender. God, I wonder if this air in Ohio, what the heck?
Yeah, it's not humid enough for you. It's
it
a
must
little
be
dry for you.
And it's chilly. It's actually 68 here. I'm pleasant. It's nice. It's nice. I'm just not used to it.
Yeah, you're used to 110% humidity.
Yeah, in 94 or 5 degrees. which is really
So-
funny to see me mow my yard and I'm wearing jeans and boots.
It got hot here this year, and I'm sure it got hot by you. No, it's always hot by you, even in the summer or in the winter. So here's a question that I always like to ask, and I think you're the perfect person for it. I'm a firm believer that just like a nickname, you can never give a nickname to yourself. Like you can never tell somebody you're somebody's mentor. It's a name given to you. So in your opinion, what differentiates a master blender? What distinguishes a master blender in the cigar industry? And what skills would be crucial to even have that title?
Their accolades. You've blended a cigar and you know this cigar has been successful. It's a existing blend. You've listened, you've got the palate, you've trained, you've created a masterpiece, if you will. It's every manufacturer can say, I'm just a blender. Well, you've created, Monte Cristo White Label. You created Romeo Reserve Real, two of the greatest brands that we manufacture. I'm going to call you a master blender. I mean, because you mastered this, that not to the point to say you're a master, you know and see all. It's you've created master blends that are iconic with the industry. I mean, look at Opus Extra, Chateau Fuente, or you can go to Oliva Series
Rafael
Nadal with the aging room and the Quattro series, and when it was the Quattro F55 or the F, he's done a lot. I mean, certain people, they just have a talent to know what tobacco does. When you combine different tobacco leaves from different farms and different areas, how they work together and to help create that flavor profile that we're actually looking for.
Now, would you say a master blender almost needs to be able to create the cigar in their mind, knowing with their experience what that cigar is going to be like before they can create it? And does that make sense? Like they can envision it, they can create the recipe?
I think it's not to know the recipe. I think they need a good guideline, because remember, tobacco is that living, breathing thing. Kind of like the reason why you see so many back orders from manufacturers the last couple of years. We all have to wait for the tobacco to tell us when it's done. And tobacco has a mind of its own. It was a living and breathing thing. It still has a mind of its own. So you have to wait for that tobacco to say, I think these are going to work really well, but let's try some variations of it. And from there, like it mentioned, you may build 25 different models, but we got to see which ones work. We all have an idea that, these might work, but we don't know until we try it.
So as they're going through creating these leaves, we're now starting to get into the hybridized variation of tobacco leaves that are becoming very, very popular. Hybridized Corojo, Coro 99, Carrillo. And how does, first off, explain what hybridized tobacco is and what the benefit to growing it is.
Well, I got to take you back and teach you about the birds and the bees. There's a little boy plant, and there's a little girl plant, and they come from different sides of the tracks, and you get to introduce them, and they can sometimes make the ugly baby, and sometimes they can make the beautiful baby. We always hope for the beautiful baby, but sometimes when you say, "Oh, my beautiful baby," and everybody goes, we know that leaf isn't going to be the right one, right? But it's literally a male plant, a female plant from two different varietals. One has more of a strength than another. We can crossbreed those and to create that hybridized blend or tobacco. Kind of like we came out with one called Jaguetta, right? We came out with a cigar called Jaguetta. It was unfortunately an epic fail because we didn't look at the long term of what that wrapper leaf was going to do, and it was very easily would explode on people. It just didn't have the pliability we need. And what I mean by pliability is if you look at a cigar right here, you're going to see that most cigars are going to bellow out right in this area because that moisture that's in there has got expanded. Well, we didn't allow that to expand out. We didn't test it far enough before we released it. Otherwise, we would have delayed it and done some further processing to it. It's another fermentation cycle. But we hybridized that using I believe it was a Corojo and a Cuban seed hybrid together to create the Jaguetas strain, if memory served. This was going back to 7, 8 years ago. So maybe longer. But that hybridized seed, it's great for filler leaf right now. We use it in a lot of our filler, but it was meant to be designed really to be a wrapper. It just didn't work. But then you see a lot of hybridized seeds that do really work from a lot of manufacturers, including ourselves. But a lot of us, we like to work with original straining and work more on the curing and the fermenting side, using different techniques like AJ's. Normally a Pelon is going to be 6 feet by 6 feet in width by 10 feet in length. And they look like two big horseshoe tracks. AJ Fernandez does his on a shorter scale. His are on a lower, like 4 feet, or even sometimes 3 feet, to where a slower, lower temperature, like cooking a steak at 325, or you cook it at 160 under a smoke for a long period of time, and then you kick that heat up. It's using different techniques in what the tobacco does. And sometimes even taking, like we've used leaf, we took the HM 175th that we came out with. That was the leaves that pop out of the very top of the plant after we've done that full fermentation or full harvesting, right? Leaf by leaf, leaves come off. We get to the very top in that Lajero section. That stalk is still there. We can sometimes see a couple of leaves that'll pop out the top. We'll let those grow. And then when they grow, they become full term, we'll pop those off. Those are called medio tiempo. Those medio tiempo leaves was what we used for the wrapper leaf on that 175th. But in order to get those leaves ready, we had to actually take those leaves and, believe it or not, we had to jeopardize and really destroy broadleaf. We stuck them in between broadleaf in the fermentation, so that would help create a different fermentation cycle on that tobacco and influencing it with broadleaf into that to give it a completely different flavor. And for those who've smoked the 175th knows that was an incredible cigar. But there again, we only had so much broadleaf to really put down, because once you're done with it, that broadleaf is done. It's ruined. So we ruined a lot of broadleaf tobacco in order to create that 175th medio tiempo leaf that we used on the 175th celebratory cigar.
Now, being that you brought up the celebratory 175th, that was obviously a limited edition run. What goes into the decision-making process of creating a rare limited edition cigar? And then how do you guys ensure that cigar delivers the truly unique experience you're looking for that one-off limited run?
Marketing and tobacco are what are going to create it. So like we're coming up on Romeo's. Romeo's got a huge anniversary coming up. We're doing numbers. 1875 minus 150 years. Is it 150? 2025 is coming up minus the 1875, right? So it's 150th anniversary of Romeo y Julieta. We're already in production of creating a astounding Romeo for that. And with that, I mean, there's planning that's involved, but now it's creating those blends, starting to work with certain tobaccos and catching those tobaccos so we have time to age the cigar in final production. And then from final production, do we need to do anything different? Put it in a different little heat cycle within the aging room. Bring the temperature up in one little section, or do we need to lower the temperature down because it's really good? We want to hold it for 2 more years until it's ready to be launched. You know, there's just different things that go on to it, but it's already in initial.
I guess let me ask the question a different way. How do you choose the tobacco for that truly unique experience? Meaning, do you plant specific tobacco that you know in advance you're going to use? Like what determines if the tobacco is truly unique enough to be a rare limited run?
Well, the 175th, we actually just came across in our Honduran farm. The meeting with the Empo leaf, because it just happened to pop out the right time. It had great sugar content. The leaf was beautiful. It was green. It's just gorgeous. Then we wanted to go through and do the I forget what they call it, where you can mix the leaves in together. There's a term for it for wines, but Solera, I think it's called Solera, the Solera effect. Where you can find things together. We had an idea that what it was going to do, but we didn't know it was going to turn out that good. But we knew we wanted to build something celebratory and different than anything else. With this particular one, we're looking at tobaccos that come from different areas and certain farms, because every farm, let's just say, AJ's farm in Farm 3 in the Condega region. Just throw a number out there, all right? At farm alone, it could be 50 acres. Well, he may have 10 acres that's a different microclimate than everywhere else, so that microclimate might have that temperature variance that's a little different than everywhere else, and that leaf may say, this is really good. And we've seen progression and really good stuff with it out of the years. We may say, we want this tobacco this year, and we'll go to that farm and we'll buy the tobaccos that we want coming out of that bale. And then work with him to help create that blend. So it sometimes is going as far as saying, I've seen good stuff coming out of this farm in the last 3, 4, 5 years. We want that tobacco, and it's gone through curing already. It's in the fermentation cycle. We want to see what it's done with at the end. Then we take a decision on secondary or three times fermentation on what we want to do to tweak it to exactly what we're looking for. That answer your question?
Absolutely. And in fact, you brought up another question. You had mentioned microclimates. Mm-hmm. What I can imagine what a microclimate is, but you said 50 acres could be different variations of microclimates. Could you explain what a microclimate is and how it contributes to the growing factors and strain factors of that tobacco?
Sure. I mean, microclimate is literally just a small pocket of climate differences. And what I mean by that, it could be a humidity level at which the plant grows in, the variance in temperature from day to night. I mean, certain times up along a hillside where that hillside, that little pocket, the weather pressure will go over it and it creates a pocket pressure to where it'll be warm during the day, but it'll actually drop maybe 1 degree at night or 2 degrees at night, where that extra flux causes those roots to grow bigger, getting more minerals involved with it. And now you get more of a green and just a different effect on the tobaccos. It can even be as much as one part of the field can get rain, another part can't. It doesn't get as much during that 1 year, for whatever reason. It's a little areas that might be able to have just a different microclimate or a different climate setting based off where it's located by elevation or by weather pattern. And
see,
what it does
I
to the
knew
cigar,
you were the right person for this.
That cigar, it obviously is going to affect the tobacco, which affects everything down the road.
So, here, this will be the last question. I'm going to throw some lightning round stuff at you, and we'll close the show. I have heard from a few different manufacturers when they've said that they were brutally honest with me when they were like, hey, if somebody says a 15-year-old or 15-year aged tobacco is used in this cigar, it most likely is not all 15-year aged tobacco, but maybe a leaf or 2 or 3, or maybe the wrapper, because of the overwhelming expense it would take to actually age that much tobacco for 15 years. What is the reality of that? Is that true?
Oh, 100%. 100% true.
So then why can companies get away with saying it's 15-year age tobacco instead of it has some 15-year age tobacco?
Because they don't have to say it's 100% 15-year age tobacco. It just has to say it has 15-year age tobacco in it. That
now,
could be
what is the
half a leaf, a quarter leaf, a full leaf, 3 leaves. I don't know any manufacturer is going to do 3 or even 2 leaves of a 15-year-old tobacco unless they're just stupid with money and can sit on it and say, oh, this tobacco is doing really well. Let's make a cigar out of this whole thing. even then, you got to say you got to have a little bit of Lajero, you got to have some Seco and some Viso and some Seco in here to get that burn rate going right. And you're not going to get it out of tobacco that's all 15 years because it's going to burn pretty darn quick. So you're going to need to put some Lajero in there to get that strength and body fill into it.
So is that more of a gimmick, marketing gimmick, to say it has 15-year age tobacco? Meaning, does that tobacco, are you going to actually taste what that 15-year age tobacco is doing if it's one leaf or half leaf or quarter leaf?
Oh, well, I mean, if you're talking quarter leaf, probably not. That would be a marketing gimmick at that point. But I think if you even took one leaf and you built a 50 ring gauge or 52 ring gauge cigar, you're gonna taste there's a difference in there, and especially if it's a wrapper leaf that's 15 years old. That better be broadleaf because Connecticut ain't gonna last that long. But you're something that's that old that it's still got good rigidity to it, and the manufacturer is willing to put time, money, and thousands and thousands of dollars into the blending of it. You know it's going to have an effect. Otherwise, they wouldn't go through the process. They wouldn't even market it that way. Wouldn't be worth it. Okay, fair enough.
Now, get into here some final questions to end the show. What does Travis Pappenheim do when he's not educational guru Travis Pappenheim?
Working on my honeydew list, because when I actually get into town, she's got the list. Before the kiss, she's like, here's your list. Hi. All right, and I get to work, huh? But beyond that, I mean, I do enjoy spending time with my neighbors, my friends. I mean, the neighborhood I moved into about 7 years ago. Got to build some close personal relationships with those neighbors. One of them has had a kid, he's gonna be 3 years old in February, and he calls me Uncle Travis. There's no blood relation at all, but we are spending time with each other's house all the time. It's a close family. So, but beyond that, I love to sit back in my garage, enjoy a cigar by myself, keeps my wife away, and you know, I get to sit back and watch TV because I know there's gonna be plenty of honey time, which I relish and appreciate. I love spending time with my wife, but there are times I just need a little break, and I go out and have a cigar, and she'll come out and check on me and see how she's doing. But beyond that, working on cars. I'm a car head. I'm a motorhead. So I love building cars. I love tweaking. I love, toying with stuff and building radically weird machines that really shouldn't be built, but I'm willing to try it just because why not?
What's your most favorite car you've ever owned or worked on?
Probably my Chevy Nova 2 with a 454 truck motor, cammed, and had a stall converter on it, and tubbed out the rear. Had 11 and a half skinnies on the front, 11 and a halfs on the rear, and it was a puller. It
got
definitely
posse rear end.
Oh, of course, yeah. If you don't have posse and you're on a track, you're an idiot, or you just need to upgrade. Even if you go buy a truck. Or hell, you can buy a Ford 350 dual, a pickup truck rear end, and just put those on there. Get something with solid bars and put posi on it and go. You can buy a lot of used parts.
What's your dream car?
Oh, you don't want to hear this. Yeah, next question. You don't want to hear it.
I do.
You'll be embarrassed. Yeah, I'll be embarrassed to even say it on the air with you. But right now, my wife just wrecked our 2016 Challenger Super B Scat Pack that I was going to turn into a track car. Ooh. She totaled it, unfortunately. But we had to buy her new car, so we bought her new car, which delayed my.
Glad she's safe.
Build my car. Oh yeah, she's safe. And you got it. Cars are cars. I don't care about them, but. Now that she's safe, and she's fine. I look at it and go, oh, I lost my Challenger with a motor that only had 5,000 miles on it. It's like, oh, horsepower, tranny it could handle up to 1,000 horsepower.
Oh yeah.
But then I started thinking, I'm like, what haven't I built? I built muscle cars. I've framed off muscle cars and anywhere from 30, which I'm working on a 30 Plymouth right now, but that's going bone stock. And I thought, what haven't I done? And I've been seeing some videos with these smart cars. And I thought, you know what? If I can see a smart car, and I watch videos, and I've talked to the guy that had built one of them, that can beat a mid-engine Corvette, that can beat a Hellcat in a smart car, yeah, it just sounds like fun for me.
Man, that's like a go-kart.
Yeah, a go-kart with a good frame around it. And it's really, because they have great framers and you can put in internal frames on them, but it doesn't take much more than a Hayabusa motor. Hayabusa motorcycle motor in the back of one of those, bye-bye. I thought, living in South Florida, that could be fun. That or like an Austin, an Austin Mini, not the Mini Coopers, but the Austin Minis that you can get in England, right side drive. Strip one of those out, put a Honda VTEC motor into it with the front wheel drive, convert to a rear, and zip around South Florida in one of those. A, I'd freak the heck out of a lot of people being a right side drive, and then B, it'd be that tiny little car that's passing Lambos down the road. Just could be fun. I don't know. To me, it just seems like it'd be kind of a fun thing. Maybe I'm getting old enough. I'm going back to my childhood. I don't know.
No, absolutely. It sounds like a great time. In fact, when I sold cars for about a year, and we had somebody come in, clearly midlife crisis, just got through his divorce and bought a Hellcat. The Hellcats come with two keys, a red and a blue.
Yep.
You only want to ride with the red or with the blue. You never want to actually ride with the red unless you're on a track or anything. Well, the guy wasn't paying attention, started the key with the red key, and came back in literally at idle about an hour later and told us that he got stuck at a stoplight when it was green because he kept breaking the tires free off the back and he couldn't figure out how to just get it to move forward. Well, anyways, he shaved a lot of the life off the tires, about 45 minutes trying to get this thing going. The guy was, like I said, clearly midlife crisis. He came in with like a Honda, I think is what he traded in.
Yeah, so he probably drove it in a Honda or Toyota.
Yeah, and it was clearly more than he was bargaining for. So we ended up keeping, I think it was like 20 grand of his off the car and putting that onto a different car for him. But we let him trade it back in. But he had to buy all 4 new tires because the rears were, he took off about half the life on them. It was embarrassing. Yeah, it was embarrassing actually. But the guy was a good sport, but sometimes a vehicle could just be too much for somebody that they're like, I'm gonna hop in and start driving it. And I've had, because my brother works for BMW, I've had the ability to drive some really, really, really nice fast cars, and there is a level where you're like, my experience in a car isn't at the level to control this car, and in very various different ways. So, but as we're coming in here to some additional lightning round questions, what are some of your favorite pairings with a cigar?
Something liquid and something smokable.
So you don't have anything specifically. My go-to is X and X.
I've done, if nobody's ever done a pairing with, let's just, you can choose the Romeo Reserva Real Nicaragua. Smoke that cigar. Grab a Coke. Grab a Dr. Pepper. Grab a Mountain Dew or a root beer of some kind. And not a Mountain Dew, but a root beer. Grab those 3. Smoke a little bit of cigars, start off with the Coke, get a third of the way in, drink the Dr. Pepper, get a little way for, another third, drink the root beer. You will find that cigar is completely different. Everybody says spirits and wines and alcohol, but you know what? You can pair with anything. If it's ingestible, you can pair with it. And I did a pairing with soda pops, and that's where I picked that up. I was like, unbelievable. Dr. Pepper with their 23 flavors, you get that big 23 on the side of it. Holy crap, I couldn't believe how many earthy tones and various other stuff that would never come into that cigar were all of a sudden popping out. It was like, wow, okay.
Yeah.
But you're always going to have good pairings, you can have bad pairings. And the mood, the location, wherever if anyone goes on vacation, that's probably the greatest cigar they've ever had. When they go out and have a cigar, with a pairing. I went to Dominican. I went to Punta Cana and had a Mama Juana and a $2 Cuban cigar that was authentic from Cuba. It was the greatest thing ever. Well, yeah. Look where you were. I mean, of course, it's going to be the greatest thing ever. But it's really a social setting on what you do. If you feel this, it's a good pairing for your palate, because all of our palates are different. Do it. But I'm a Scotch guy. Johnny Walker Double Black and the Romeo San Andres, I think is a very good pairing together. The smokiness of one picks up the smokiness of the other and just makes it even smokier. And as you know, I love my smoked meats, so I like them smoked.
I know you got to get some of my bacon, man. You got to get some of my bacon, dude. I promise you, Fred Rui calls it in the top 3-5 best bacons he's ever had in his life. And Bruce, who's actually a very big fan of the show, close friend of the show, just ordered 20 pounds, and he'll tell you that it was made because I hate store-bought bacon. Yep. And I just wanted something better, and it kind of turned into a business. But in closing here, Travis, tell everybody, if they're geeky enough, how to find information that Altadis and you provide to give them that geeky knowledge that they're looking for. Where can they go to find this expert level knowledge?
Well, the geeky knowledge, I mean, you can go to our altadisusa.com website, and that's got good descriptors of the brand and wrapper, binder, filler, country of origin, smoking style, like flavor notes and certain aspects of it, and visual of what the cigar looks like. That's obviously your Cigar 101 geekiness. Beyond that, you can pull up my name, Travis Pappenheim, under YouTube, and I've done a ton of videos on YouTube where you'll find something in there that I've done a video on, and I hope I've kept pretty consistent. I keep my lies straight, but you'll find it doesn't matter which one you go. The stories may stay the same. So if you've heard the story once, don't butter your eyes and God, that story again, because I use a lot of analogies and I use a lot of stories that really help make people make sense of it. So if you hear the stories again and again, you just know that there's a reason why. It's because sometimes people just have to be more ingestible with food and other analogies. But if you were to go onto YouTube and type in Travis Taste and Boveda, and if you all know
that's
Boveda,
the best video.
Boveda, but Boveda. It's one I have people around the country come to me and say, I watched that video of yours. I had to watch it like 6 times because I kept picking up new things. And it was a fun video that we did off the cuff within 24 hours of me, from a phone call to when we were shooting video. It was less than 24 hours. They went, hey, Travis, can you come out and do this? I'm like, sure. I sat down, Rob and I just got into a conversation, and I knew where they wanted to go with it, by the end on how to taste cigars better. But I kind of went into everything, into cutting and lighting, proper cutting and lighting techniques and storage techniques and things you can do to help your cigars out. And then finally got to the end on how to taste a cigar like we do in our factory, in ways you can really pull a lot more flavor out of a cigar. So it's a fun video that if somebody wanted to, maybe put themselves to sleep at night, watch that video. But if you want to learn a lot and learn a little bit here and there and make it palatized for yourself at 5 minutes a pop, you can spend the next year and watch it and pick up something new every time you watch it.
I will say that video taught me so much, and then to have you in person kind of go a little bit more detail into that video when we met last year around the tasting and pulling it in, bringing in aeration. That video changed my cigar tasting experience immensely, and I think that was probably one of the best cigar introductory tasting overall conceptual videos that's currently out there for really any new or cigar geek can learn from that video in the same way.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Dude, thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you so much for being a friend and for picking up my calls and answering questions and coming on and going through all the geekiness of it. Truly appreciate
And if anyone wants to, the phone number is down in the comment section. Just leave a comment and it'll come back to you in an instant message. Tell your friends. Okay.
He loves 2 or 3 a.m. phone calls. I do it all the time.
And I probably answer them because I'm waking up on the East Coast.
Yes, that's very true. So, but in all honesty, thank you so much, Travis, for always coming on, and thank you for all your knowledge. And I truly think 20, 30 years from now, what you have done in the industry will be cemented and never forgotten as one of the greats of education and experience and knowledge in this industry. And I am so grateful that Altadis put you in a position to allow you to essentially be the U.S. teacher in the cigar world. And it really, truly means a lot to be able to call you a friend. Thank you for spending the night with me. And I will let you take us out of the show. Tell everybody your favorite cigar that Altadis makes, and tell everybody your favorite budget stick that Altadis makes, and we'll end the show.
Right now, I mean, it's so hard. We make so many great cigars, and we all go through these different phases, and it comes to cigars. Probably one of the greatest cigars that we currently make that I'm drawn to on a regular basis is that H.M. Heritage. The reason I had that with me is because I carry those with me everywhere I fly. That seems to be just one that I really, truly enjoy on the premium side. Now, the ultra premium side, I would say that probably the Vega Fina white label would be the original white label series. To me, that's for a budget $7 cigar. It is so consistent. Every time I light it up, it's the exact same thing over and over and over and over again. When I work out in the yard, because the wife's got the list and the whip, she just get to work. I grab that cigar because I know my mind's going to be right, and I can go through my day, and it's always the same cigar. So I joke about it. I love my wife. Don't anybody. But it is one that I know because I love to spend time outdoors. Friday night when I get home, to minus going to bed and eating breakfast, jumping in the shower, I'm outside. But I know I can grab that white label anytime, mowing the yard or doing weeding or cutting the palm trees down if I need to trim them back or whatever. I can have that cigar. It's always a consistent one for me on a weekend.
Awesome. Travis, where's your next event? Where can people run into you at?
I think the next one is the Tampa Cigar Bash in 1st of October, and that's in Tampa, Florida at the Hard Rock Hotel. That's awesome. The first weekend.
Anybody watching the show, it's going to be in the Tampa area. Go down there, create your list of extensively hard questions, and Travis will walk you through detailed one by one. If he doesn't, his phone number's below, and you can make that time later. But in all honesty, thank you so much, my friend, for coming on. Truly appreciate you and all your work that you've done, and your support for both me and the show. Truly does mean a lot. Thank you so much to all the sponsors: BAMF, ROCF, Kristoff Cigars, ROCF, K by Karen Berger, Karen Berger Cigars, Sagrado, New Air, Micallef, Big Sky, Cornell and Diehl, Loud Aurora, Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust, and the big guy. I know where you can absolutely guaranteed to meet Travis. Go to TGS in February next year. He will be there. He was there this year. So if you don't get to Tampa, keep an eye out for the great smoke put on by Smokin' Cigars. Travis will be there, and he'll be there to answer all your questions and give you a free cigar too.
And follow me on What Is Travis Smoking on Instagram.
Absolutely. Instagram, follow him on YouTube and Facebook as well. And thank you so much. And until we see you all again, smoke what you like, smoke as often as you can, and have a great rest of your night. Bye, everyone.